Welcome to Mindful Moments. Nourish your mind on the go. This video uses AI narration to present our original book analysis. Today, we're diving into Barbara Ehrenreich's Nickel and Dimed on not getting by in America. It's a fascinating look at what it really takes to survive on minimum wage in America. And Ehrenreich doesn't just analyze data. She goes undercover, taking on a series of low-wage jobs herself.
Yeah, it's not just some academic thing. She really immerses herself in all these different worlds, working as a waitress, a maid, a nursing home aide, even a retail worker, to really get a feel for what that life is actually like.
And her journey starts in Key West, Florida. You might think a place known for its beaches and that laid-back vibe would be, somewhat affordable, but that's not what she finds at all.
No, not really. Right away, the book hits you with the problem of housing insecurity. Even in a tourist spot like Key West, finding a decent place to live that you can actually afford is a huge struggle. Ehrenreich ends up sharing a really cramped trailer with a coworker, and you hear about others living in even worse situations. Motel rooms, cars, you name it. And this housing issue, or really the lack of housing, it follows her everywhere she goes throughout the book.
It's crazy how, even with a job, having a safe and stable place to live is just completely out of reach for so many people. And it's not even just the housing. Ehrenreich has to deal with terrible working conditions everywhere she goes, long hours, physically demanding tasks, and often just a complete lack of respect from the people managing her.
It really makes you think about how we value or maybe devalue certain types of work in our society. These are jobs that are essential to all of us. The people who clean our homes, prepare our food care for our elderly. Yet they're treated like they're disposable. Their needs and struggles are just ignored.
Yeah, and in Key West, Ehrenreich starts out working at a family restaurant, trying to balance the demands of waitressing with trying to find a better place to live. It's clear that even working two jobs, making ends meet, is just incredibly difficult.
One of the things that really got to me was how quickly she hits her physical limits. She's a healthy, educated woman, but even she has trouble keeping up with how physically demanding these jobs are, especially the housekeeping work. It makes you realize how unsustainable this whole lifestyle is, especially for people with health problems or disabilities.
Oh, for sure. And I was really struck by that constant pressure to be fast, efficient, productive, all while being paid a wage that makes it basically impossible to cover your basic living expenses. It feels like the system is designed to keep people trapped in poverty.
It really does. And you always hear about this labor shortage. But it's not that there aren't people willing to work. It's that the wages are just not enough to live on. You can't expect people to work full time and still not be able to afford a decent place to live or food.
Yeah, it's a huge disconnect. We hear so much about hard work and personal responsibility. But Ehrenreich shows that even when people put in incredible effort, the system is working against them. If you're trying to make it on minimum wage, it's like an uphill battle the whole way.
It is. So then Ehrenreich leaves Key West and heads up to Portland, Maine. And she dives into the world of cleaning services. It's a totally different setting, but the challenges she faces are basically the same.
Yeah, and that's where the theme of dehumanization really comes through. Ehrenreich talks about feeling invisible, like she's being treated as a cog in a machine, instead of a human being with needs and aspirations, and reminds you that these are real people. They have families, dreams, anxieties, just like everyone else.
Yeah, exactly. And you see it in how the Maids, the company she works for, treats its employees. This constant surveillance, the distrust, the pressure to meet these crazy expectations. It all adds up to this feeling of being powerless and hopeless. It's not even just physical, It takes a mental and emotional toll, too. That constant pressure to perform, the fear of messing up. Knowing that you could lose your job at any moment, it really wears you down.
Oh, absolutely. I remember that part about the AccuTrack test.
Yeah.
This personality test they used to supposedly weed out dishonest employees.
Yeah.
It felt so Orwellian, like a symbol of how much distrust there is in that kind of work environment.
Yeah, that distrust really shows you how imbalanced the power dynamic is. It's almost like if you treat people like they can't be trusted and like they're disposable, then they're not going to feel invested in their work or loyal to their employer.
Right. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
And you can see how that creates a feeling of hopelessness. Like no matter how hard you work, you're never going to get ahead. It's like you're running on a treadmill, going as fast as you can, but not actually getting anywhere.
Exactly. And then you add in the lack of affordable housing. Ehrenreich and her coworkers are constantly struggling to find a place to live. That doesn't take their whole paycheck. It's this vicious cycle. You need a job to afford housing, but you need housing to be able to work.
Yeah, you can really see that in Ehrenreich's experience in Maine. She talks about living in this motel room that's full of cockroaches and having to choose between paying rent and buying food, it's just a stark reminder that for a lot of people, poverty isn't a choice. It's a reality that they're forced to live with.
And it's a reality that most people don't even see. The people who can afford to have their homes cleaned or eat out at restaurants, they don't see the struggles of the people who are doing those jobs. It's like there are these two separate worlds that exist side by side, but they never really interact.
Right. And that brings us to Ehrenreich's last stop on her journey, Minneapolis, Minnesota. There she gets a job at Walmart, a company that's always talking about its family-friendly atmosphere and its employee benefits. But what does she find when she gets there?
Well, let's just say the reality doesn't exactly live up to the hype. Ehrenreich finds herself in another really controlled environment, where she's at the mercy of management and the customers. And the irony of working for this huge retail giant while struggling to afford basic necessities isn't lost on her.
Right, and even though the company talks a lot about teamwork and shared goals, Ehrenreich finds a workforce that's mostly isolated and demoralized. There's a sense of resignation, like it's pointless to speak up or try to change things.
It's interesting how, even though the locations and the jobs are different, the underlying themes stay the same. Low wages, lack of affordable housing, tough working conditions, and this constant feeling of being disrespected, it really highlights how deeply rooted these problems are. They're baked into our economy.
Exactly, and that's where the book really makes us think critically about the American dream. If you can work full-time and still not be able to afford the basics, what does that say about the idea that anyone can move up in the world? What does it say about the values that we supposedly hold as a society?
Right. It forces us to confront the difference between what we say and what actually happens. We talk about hard work and personal responsibility, but for a lot of people, the system is set up to make it almost impossible to get ahead.
But the book isn't all negative. There are some moments of hope sprinkled in. One that really stood out to me was when Ehrenreich sees the hotel workers' strike in Minneapolis.
Oh, yeah, that's a key scene because it shows that collective action and solidarity are possible. Even when there's a huge power imbalance, workers can come together to fight for their rights and demand better treatment.
It's a good reminder that change is possible, but it takes a collective effort, and people have to be willing to challenge the status quo.
It really makes you think about what we can do. How can we as individuals and as a society make the system fairer for all workers?
That's the big question, right? And Ehrenreich doesn't really give us any easy answers, but she does challenge us to change the way we think about work and the people who are doing it.
One thing that really stuck with me was the importance of a living wage, like actually raising the minimum wage to a point where if you're working full-time, you can afford basic things like food and housing.
It seems so obvious when you put it like that. But it's been such a struggle to make that happen. And reading Ehrenreich's book really drives home how inadequate the current minimum wage is for so many people.
It really does. And then the other thing is we have to do something about the lack of affordable housing. Her experiences in all these different cities show just how widespread the problem is. It's not just big, expensive cities either. It's rural areas, suburbs, everywhere.
It's everywhere. And what's interesting is that Ehrenreich doesn't just blame corporations or politicians. She also wants us to think about our own role in this system as consumers.
Oh, that's a good point. Every time we eat outside, stay in a hotel, shop at a store, we're benefiting from the work of people making low wages. And a lot of times those people are barely scraping by, even though they're providing essential services.
It's true. It's easy to go about our lives without really thinking about the people who are making our lives easier and more comfortable. But Nickel and Dimed really makes you confront that reality.
For sure. She even says that the working poor are the real philanthropists in our society. They're sacrificing their own well-being so that the rest of us can have our comfort and convenience. It's a powerful idea. It really makes you think about your own values and priorities.
It does. So what can we do? Besides pushing for things like a higher minimum wage and affordable housing, I think we can start by just acknowledging the humanity of low-wage workers, treating them with respect, offering a living wage if we're employers, and just being aware of the challenges they face.
Yeah, I agree. It's about recognizing that we're all connected, and that what happens to one part of society affects all of us.
So to wrap things up, we highly recommend checking out Nickel and Dimed. It's a must-read for anyone who wants to understand the realities of poverty and inequality in America. It's a book that will stay with you long after you finish it, and it makes you think differently about the world.
Couldn't agree more.
And if you're interested in buying the book, there's a link in the description below. And while you're down there, take a second to subscribe to our channel for more deep dives like this one. We also love to hear your thoughts. So leave a comment and let us know what resonated with you. Thanks for joining us on Mindful Moments.